Hello guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm bringing you some tips, and with these tips you'll become a better developer pretty much instantly, and I swear to God this is not a lie. Please check out the video and enjoy. And luckily for you, these tips won't be like please go climb Mount Everest. These will be more like if you make your bed every day, you're gonna have awesome results. First on our list we have code formatters. By using a code formatting and using a style guide, because basically a formatting tool is just applying a style guide to your own code, you make it so that it's easier for other developers to read your code. Because the formatting and the style of your document is going to be the same across everybody that's sharing the same formatting tool or using the same style guide. And so you can see how this greatly improves communication. Your code will look a lot more professional and just a lot more easy on the eyes. So I'll give you an example of how it looks without formatting and then with formatting. Okay guys, so here in this code we can see a couple of weird things. Some spacings are off, there's some extra spaces at the end of this doc string, some extra spaces here. This also all looks a bit bizarre, and you can run this, it will work. The problem is it's not clean, it's not pretty. So basically a code formatter is kind of like a pretty print. It will pretty up your code, and let's just run this. Okay, and you can see here you have a more aesthetic pleasing code, and this is very helpful because it makes you so that you don't need to actually know the style guide in order to follow it, because this does it automatically for you. So for example, stuff like spaces between functions, like new lines. In theory, and according to the PEP style guide, you need two. And no one forces you to use two or not, but if everybody uses two, why won't you also use two? So basically the formatter pretty ups our code, and it makes it look way more professional, in my opinion, of course. But the difference from this to this, in my opinion, is very substantial, and we're looking at a very narrow and small example. Still within the formatting, we have isort, which will basically sort all your imports and will put you in the correct style of the imports. So you probably, some of you may be like, wow, what do you mean about like imports and order? Yeah, so there's an order from which normally you import packages in Python. Normally it goes, you first import from the standard library, and then you import third-party packages. And this is separated by a line. So you also should alphabetically order them and all of that stuff. And yeah, let's just take a look here. We have like third-party, lib, blah, 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 and then you also import it from here. And basically you could just transfer this to here, of course. And this is very confusing, but with a single command you can make this a lot more clear and a lot more organized. And as you can see here, you have the standard, and then you have the external or third-party imports. So next on my list we have Linters. A linter is a static analysis tool, meaning it will look at your code and not run it. It will look just at the files of your code and will just point out some things that you could improve on. So this basically will look at both the stylish and also the syntax and design components. So it can tell you, okay, you have an extra space here. It can tell you there's too many if statements in this function, too many arguments, and it can just literally like tell you like this won't run and before even running. So this is a very good tool, and if you use it well with some consistency every day before you do any push to your code, you will have a much healthier code base. Now we can see here an example code that I just made. And the linter that we're using is called pylint. We will run the pylint on our file, and it will tell us some code smells or something that's wrong with our file. We start with 2 errors. So first of all, we're mixing the documentation of this function, which is correctly identified. And then there's an else clause on loop without a break statement. Remove the else and indent all the code inside it. Okay, so let's just follow what the linter says. And let's add here, add 2 numbers together. Okay, now if we run again, our score has come from 8 to 9.09. And now we just literally follow, remove the else and indent all the code inside it. Because if you think about it, this statement here doesn't make a lot of sense. Why, I won't take the time to explain here, but this is basically equivalent and a lot more clean and clear. So if we run the pylint again, now we have a score of 10. So basically, the pylint and the linters in general is just like a professor or a senior developer, telling you how to do certain things so that they're more in line with how other people develop. Next and final one, also the most difficult to implement, is tests. Tests are great because tests gives us a safety net when developing, because if we change something and that change alters something else that we are not expecting, our test in principle should get them. Although this is the last one, I think it's also probably the most important one, but it's much harder to implement. It's a lot more difficult to know everything about testing, and also you can write basically just useless tests that don't cover for anything that you're looking for. So testing in itself is a whole art. I'm not that good at testing. I do my best, I try to improve every day, but it's definitely something that lacks in my department, and it's something that I'm always working towards improving. So I'll tell you, it makes a day and night difference between tested code and not tested code. If you test code, employers and everybody will basically love it. Create a test for a function called add integers that adds 2 integers together. Test helps us define the constraints of a specific function. It acts as a safety net, but it also acts as documentation for other developers. So let's say we have this function, add integers. We have not seen the definition, but we assume that once we add 1 and 2, we get 3. And if we give it a negative number, we should get 0. If we run the test, we use PyTest. We can see there's an error because here here the output was -10 and we were expecting 0. If you look at the definition of a function, we can see that it doesn't have any control about negative numbers. If we had this snippet of code and any of these number 1, number 2 is less than 0, now it will return 0. And if we now run the test again, we can see that the tests all pass. So this is what testing is for. Testing is to enable us developers to make changes without being afraid of breaking constraints that we have imposed on our code before adding this new feature. Okay, so tests are very useful, but they're also very hard to get right, and also they take a little bit of time to develop intuition towards them. So that's why they're in the last place. All right, guys, just to wrap this up, thank you so much for watching. If you follow these tips, these are just habits that you can take up today, and believe me, it will put you ahead of so many other developers. This is what professionals do. They use formatters, they use linters, and they test their code. If you do these 3 simple things that you can start doing today, you will become a much sought after developer, and also just way better. It's like, who doesn't want to become better at what you do normally? So guys, thank you for staying up until the end, and I guess we'll see each other next week. Bye!